This is the Nashvillager podcast. It's June 15th, 2026. On this day in 1849, Nashville was in a horrible state. The city was suffering from an outbreak of cholera. Cholera is a kind of sickness you get when body waste contaminates the drinking water. Modern sanitation practices have basically eradicated the disease from our usual list of concerns in this country. And if you were to get it now, doctors would be able to treat it pretty easily with antibiotics. But it wasn't properly understood back then. When the drinking water became contaminated, the disease spread, causing intense gastrointestinal symptoms. People became dangerously dehydrated. Their skin would take on a blue tinge. Their eyes would appear sunken. And it didn't help that the treatments being used in the mid-19th century were pretty much all either off base or flat out harmful. Doctors administered laxatives or applied leeches. A publication from the time, the Nashville Journal of Medicine, shows that local physicians believed in prescribing a combination of small doses of mercury and large doses of opium to cholera patients. They'd also rub people's bellies with things like a paste made of onions or a burlap sack soaked in turpentine. The publication noted that cholera in Nashville mostly affected the city's poorest and most vulnerable residents, especially ones who lived in low-lying areas. So what a shock it must have been to everyone when President James K. Polk, newly returned to Nashville after his time in the White House, died of cholera on this day in 1849. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with context and backstory from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. President Polk left Washington, D.C. on a high. He was the manifest destiny president, and on his watch, the nation's territory grew dramatically and, for the first time, truly did stretch from sea to shining sea. He waged and won the Mexican-American War. He played hardball with the British over who should control the Oregon Territory. Now, he could play dirty. He didn't always make friends in the nation's capital. But for the most part, the people loved him. It's widely believed that he could have easily won re-election, but he had promised to only serve one term, and he stayed true to his word. In those days, the presidential inauguration was in March. After handing over control of the Oval Office to Zachary Taylor, Polk went on a triumphant tour of southern states. All along the Gulf Coast and up the Mississippi River, he was greeted by crowds of supporters and festive celebrations. Finally, after all of that fuss, he made it back home to Middle Tennessee. He visited with family in Columbia for a little bit, then took possession of the estate he just purchased in Nashville, a short walk downhill from the state capital. We know that President Polk was worried about contracting cholera. His very last journal entry, dated June 1st, mentions two other prominent citizens recovering from their own infections, and then specifies that he was making a point to just stay at home and focus on his reading. With cholera making the rounds, he said he thought home was the safest place to be. He was only in that home a few weeks before dying. What happened next is a sign of just how terrified and confused everyone was by cholera. This triumphant victor, one of the nation's favorite people at the time, the man who had made this city so proud and who had specifically said in his will that he wanted a gravesite at home, was by some accounts initially buried in a mass grave. That's just what they did with cholera victims. Now we know that the germ is only transmitted through water, but people in 1849 thought it maybe had something to do with miasma, aka bad air, or that you could get it from touching the body of someone else who had it. They wanted to keep those dead bodies and the air coming off of them, I guess, together and away from everyone else. So a large grave was opened up in the city cemetery, and all of the corpses of cholera victims were put in it until the epidemic passed. That was a total of 311 bodies, by the way, from a population that was about 36 times smaller than present-day Nashville. I suspect that so-called cholera pit remained the final resting place for many of those people. After all, most of the victims were poor. Their families probably could not afford anything else. But for a former president of the United States, things were handled a little differently. For one thing, before that burial, Polk was given a grand funeral. The service was held at McHenry Methodist Church. His body was conveyed to the city cemetery in a long parade of mourners. Masonic rites were administered as his body was lowered into the grave. For another, there is reason to believe he may have been granted a small exception to the sanitary rules. The cemetery's records seem to indicate that he was given a spot in the Grundy family lot rather than being included with all the other cholera victims. The records also listed his cause of death as complicated instead of cholera, even though there's no question what disease killed him. So while his body was sent out of the heart of the city to the designated cemetery where all the cholera corpses should be, it seems that a little red tape shuffle preserved a shred of dignity that others weren't granted. A few days later, the White House and the nation's War Department announced his death to the nation. The federal government suspended business for a day to mourn. 31 gun salutes were fired at every American military post. Army officers wore black bands on their arms for a full month to indicate mourning for Polk. The following year, his widow, Sarah, had his body exhumed and reburied in a grave outside their home, just as he had wanted. When she died, about 40 years later, the home was demolished and his body was moved again, this time to be reinterred along with Sarah on the grounds of the State House. Now, a few years ago, there was an effort to move their remains one more time. The Polk family home in Columbia is maintained as a historic site, and the people who run it made the argument that it aligns more with Polk's stated wishes. But it was decided that the bodies should not be disturbed, and so they remain to this day on Nashville's Capitol Hill, under the monument that Sarah had built for her husband when she first brought his body home. In just a few minutes, a look at another signal species, the armadillo. That's coming up after the newscast.
Hey, I'm John Boyle, Deputy Managing Editor of the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom. WPLN and its regional partners are bringing you a month-long series about signal species. These animals and plants are constantly sending messages about changes to the environment, whether it's bears finding their way into urban areas more frequently or kudzu vines blanketing entire forests. What are these species trying to tell us? Tune in or visit WPLN.org each Monday in June to learn more about wildlife in Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia and why your interactions with it matter.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Tennessee is a dangerous place for pedestrians, and that's only getting worse. WPLN Cynthia Abrams says a new report shows that Memphis is the most dangerous metro area in the country. And while Nashville's a little safer, the trend here is worsening.
On Nashville pedestrian deaths, it's been a very bad start to the year. 14 people have been killed while walking, nearly 3 times more than at the same time last year. A new report from nonprofit Smart Growth America shows that many cities in the U.S. are simply getting deadlier over time. Beth Osborne, the organization's CEO, says that's because of skewed priorities.
If you ask most of our transportation leaders, the only thing they're trying to solve for is congestion and not safety.
And improving congestion actually makes streets more dangerous, since heavy traffic is the key to slowing things down.
We see a bipartisan connection on dismissing safety in a real way. They'll give nice speeches, but the fact of the matter is, if anybody ever has to slow down while driving, that is the true tragedy as far as they are concerned.
While Nashville leaders adopted the Vision Zero plan in 2022, which aims to improve roadways to reach 0 pedestrian deaths by 2050, the report and the numbers show that Nashville is only getting more dangerous for pedestrians. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
A local driver has been charged with vehicular homicide by intoxication after fatally striking a pedestrian earlier this month. The victim was a 62-year-old man walking on the Woodland Street sidewalk in East Nashville. Police say the driver of a Ford Raptor pickup truck was speeding. He crossed oncoming traffic, jumped a curb, struck the man, and plowed through a fence into a church parking lot. Tennessee residents could face higher electricity bills this summer. The cost of electricity has risen pretty steadily since 2020. A recent analysis from the National Energy Assistance Directors Association found the average household bill this summer may go up nearly 9% from last summer and more than 35% up from 2020. The average price of electricity last year was a record 13 cents per kilowatt hour. And in March, which is the latest month available from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the state was up to 15 cents. There are a lot of factors that affect electricity prices in a given year. The Tennessee Valley Authority, which generates the state's power, is undergoing a massive build-out of gas infrastructure. TVA has also been affected by gas and coal fuel costs. The utility raised rates by about 10% between 2023 and 2024. People may also just be using more power because summers are getting hotter on average, due mostly to the burning of fossil fuels. Well, federal scientists have officially declared that El Niño conditions have developed in the Pacific Ocean. El Niño is a climate pattern involving ocean warming and certain atmospheric patterns. Its impacts are varied across the country. In the summer, Tennessee sits in an in-between zone, so El Niño is generally not more likely to affect precipitation or warmth in one direction or the other. But in the fall, El Niño conditions could make drought more likely because it weakens the possibility of an Atlantic tropical storm moving into the region. It can also make Tennessee winters warmer and drier. That could be a concern if the state doesn't recover from its current drought this summer. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration finds there's a high chance El Niño will strengthen to its highest category by winter. Researchers at the Nashville-based Sarah Cannon Research Institute are developing a new strategy to fight skin cancer: personalized vaccines. In clinical trials, researchers have removed melanoma and sent it to a lab for analysis, where an algorithm predicted which proteins the body should recognize in order to fight it. Then they administered a vaccine to train the patient's immune systems. In phase 2 of the trials, patients who received the vaccines in conjunction with another FDA-approved immunotherapy drug had a higher rate of survival without the melanoma coming back. WKRN reports researchers believe the technology could be applied to other types of cancer as well. More work is still needed before this type of treatment can get approved by the Food and Drug Administration. Well, if you were ever overcharged or ticketed at certain parking lots run by Metropolis Technologies, you can now file a claim. A settlement has been reached with the Tennessee Attorney General's office. Under its terms, you can get your money back if you paid to park at a Metropolis parking lot between July 1st, 2021 and January 6th of this year, were wrongfully overcharged, ticketed, or booted, or have not received a full refund from Metropolis for the ticket. Metropolis manages parking lots in and around downtown Nashville. Many of the complaints had to do with misidentifying license plates or handing out violation notices for drivers who were not in the lots at the time. Payments will go out early next year. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. The 9-banded armadillo has become an indicator of rising temperatures in the region. For the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, Giselle Roden has more on how the species has made its way north from South America.
Deep in the heart of Bernheim Forest and Arboretum, about 25 miles south of Louisville, leaves rustle in a secluded pocket of woodlands. Natural Areas Manager Evan Patrick pushes branches aside to clear a path.
3 years ago, we were out in that section of the forest and we were kind of scouting around looking for some potential camera trapping sites for golden eagles. We found this really pronounced sinkhole.
Typically, he says these holes are fit for mammals like raccoons, moles, and sometimes bobcats or coyotes. But about 2 years ago, Patrick's team found something more peculiar.
We were really pleasantly surprised this time to see armadillo, a 9-banded armadillo.
This was the first time the species was found alive in Bernheim.
Apparently they are quite private, they spend most of their time in that sinkhole. And what we have seen is that they're really only active in the summertime.
These armadillos are about the size of a large cat. They can't store enough fat in their little bodies to hibernate in the cold, so they're constantly on the move looking for warmer areas. They're largely found in hotspots like the Deep South, Mexico, and South America. But since 1970, average temperatures in Kentucky have increased by nearly 3 degrees, with 2024 being one of the hottest years on record. This rise has brought armadillos farther north, to the Commonwealth and surrounding states like Tennessee, Indiana, and Ohio.
Someone didn't pick up an armadillo and bring it to Bernheim and drop it off here. They didn't cross an ocean to get here. They are naturally expanding their range based on climate changes.
Here at Bernheim, Patrick says armadillos have soft dirt for their long claws to dig burrows and an all-you-can-eat bug buffet in caves.
Could be cave beetles, could be something like crickets, could be isopods.
Courtney Hayes is a wildlife biologist with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. She says the state's first 9-banded armadillo was found in 1986 in LaRue County and have since been documented in 63 of Kentucky's 120 counties. Armadillos haven't made their way to the Appalachian Mountains yet, and Hayes says wildlife experts are still trying to piece together why.
Maybe they can't survive up in these high elevations where it gets too cold.
Interstates have allowed armadillos to travel way farther north than they should, sometimes by hitchhiking on vehicles, unbeknownst to the drivers. But crossing those highways is one of their most dangerous man-made threats. The thick bone plates that make up their outer shell should protect them. But Hayes explains that when they're frightened, they don't curl up in a ball like their three-banded cousins in South America.
When they get spooked, they can jump up to 4 feet up in the air, and they make this little whoop sound.
Hayes says armadillos don't even know they're walking into traffic.
They cannot see well at all. Daytime, nighttime, they cannot see very well.
And these blind journeys across the U.S. may lead an armadillo to a backyard near you.
You discourage them being around, close off your deck, don't leave big brush piles.
They also carry leprosy, but Hayes says it's not a big cause for concern.
I use this advice for any wildlife. Don't go licking it. That will save you from leprosy. And also just don't touch them. There's no need. If you do, don't put your hands in your mouth, on your face. Go wash your hands. You're going to be okay.
So keep an eye out for our tiny neighbors, because they don't know where they'll end up as they explore new frontiers in a warming climate. For the Appalachian Mid-South Newsroom, I'm Giselle Roden in Louisville.
All this month, WPLN is featuring what are known as signal species. You can read and hear more at wpln.org/signal-species. Thanks for listening to the Nashville Villager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. It really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.